Okay. All right, here we go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Milton Wellness Webinar, hosted by the City of Milton, Georgia and LRJ Foundation. I'm Courtney Spriggs, the Community Outreach Manager for the City of Milton. And before we get started, I'd like to mention a few things you'll need to know. All attendees are muted and videos are turned off by default to minimize any disruptions. We'll have a question and answer period at the end of the presentation. Please use the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen to type in your questions or comments, and our moderator will address them accordingly. Also, at the end of the webinar, a resource list will be posted in the chat box. Additionally, it'll be added to the City of Milton's website, so there'll be ample opportunity to get your questions answered, even if we don't get to them tonight. And that covers the housekeeping for tonight's webinar. Now I'd like to introduce Mayor Joe Lockwood. Mayor, if you could unmute and go ahead, please.
Thank you, Courtney. And thank you all for joining us tonight for our Milton's Mental Wellness Webinar. This is a very important, timely event on a subject that impacts people of all types, all ages, and all communities, including right here in Milton. Chances are very high that one of us knows someone who's dealt with depression, anxiety, loneliness, or other mental health issues. It might be a close friend, a family member, maybe even yourself. I know just recently I lost a very close friend. And for a lot of people with the COVID-19 pandemic, this has made these struggles even more challenging. Still, you're not alone. The valuable help, insights, and connections are available. Some of those of which you'll hear about tonight. I want to take a second here and introduce Teresa Russby. And thank you, Teresa, for partnering with the City of Milton to make this event. Teresa is a North Fulton resident who, after a family tragedy, worked with her sister and others to make a major difference. And I know, Teresa, as we were talking earlier, it's a bittersweet thing. I know it's been very tough on you and your family, but it's also, I commend you for making a difference and helping others. So, and Teresa and her family has started the LRJ Foundation, where Teresa is the executive director. Teresa, thank you and welcome tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Lockwood, for your thoughtful words and for the City of Milton for co-sponsoring this important event with us at the LRJ Foundation. A strong community can be critical to tackling such broad, challenging, and significant issues around mental health. And we are very grateful to have committed partners like the City of Milton fighting along with us. Before our panels, I would like to welcome two other Milton City leaders, both of whom, as first responders, have firsthand experience on this topic. When someone acts out against others or themselves, firefighters and police officers are often among the first on the scene, trying to settle difficult situations and, when they can, save lives. Our next speaker is Milton Police Chief Rich Austin, who spent most of his 25+ years in law enforcement in North Carolina, from a small town patrol officer in Pineville to captain of internal affairs with a far larger Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department. He came to Milton in 2017 and committed to forging valuable community partnership while doing whatever is possible to improve the residents' quality of life. Chief Austin, thank you for the time to speak with us today.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. Very honored to be a part of this conversation this evening. As Teresa said, my name is Rich Austin, and I've served as the police chief of Milton since 2017. And over my 30-year career in law enforcement, I've seen firsthand how suicide and mental health issues can lead to extremely difficult situations for both individuals and families if not met with effective interventions. As a matter of fact, unfortunately, I just left the scene of a suicide here in our city. Over the course of my career, I've worked with several organizations to help bring an awareness of this issue and to help departments I've been associated with develop the skills necessary for officers to engage effectively with people in the field who are experiencing mental crisis. Again, I'm very pleased to be a part of the conversation, and I look forward to the productive discussions that are before us. And I would also like to mention that we handle these calls, Teresa, as you said, often with our community partners, the Milton Fire Rescue Department. We work collaboratively on these very difficult calls. Unfortunately, Chief Edgar cannot be with us this evening, and he sends his regrets. However, he feels passionately about this issue as I do, and he provided these words. So these words are from Chief Edgar. Chief says, "I've been a firefighter most of my life, first in Florida and now here in Georgia. The fire department responds to many types of emergencies, which includes when a person harms themselves or others. Sadly, first responders see too many cases of physically healthy people, many of them young, who are not healthy mentally. Some fall victim to drug or alcohol abuse, in part because they don't know how to cope otherwise. Others, unfortunately, take their own lives, and it's a tragedy each time. So many people out there need help. That's why I'm glad to be a part of a community effort like this, to remind people that they're not alone, that there are things you can do to feel better inside and out." So Teresa, from the Milton Public Safety staff, both police and fire, thank you for hosting this most important community conversation.
Chief Austin, thank you for that. And we also thank Chief Edgar. We appreciate your support and partnership in this, and together we can do great things and support each other. To all those in attendance and watching, welcome to the 2020 Milton's Mental Wellness Webinar. Whereas the Mayor, the City Council, and the City of Milton, Georgia have proclaimed September 10th as Suicide Prevention Day in Milton. I would like to just take a moment at first and start by having you listen to this short clip. Did you hear that? Well, neither did I, because what we heard was the sound of silence. Silence kills more than noise ever will. And when we think about someone that is drowning, we typically cannot hear them until it's too late. That is the same for someone drowning in their own struggles of anxiety or maybe even major depression. Prevention is the understanding of the risk factors and protective factors that increase the chance of self-harm. This is very personal to me and my family as well, as on December 23rd, 2011, 2 days before Christmas, I lost my younger brother to suicide. He struggled in silence, and he had passed from undiagnosed and untreated mental illness. So unfortunately, he's not alone in these struggles. There is nearly 800,000 people around the world that die by suicide every year, which is roughly one death every 40 seconds. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in the world for ages 15 to 24 years old. Depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. Although this data sounds alarming, this was reported before the pandemic. So right now, this conversation is needed more than ever. So thank you for being here. Our communities are so diverse and our students are so unique. That is what the LRJ Foundation has been focused on for the last 8 years, as we bring creative, unique educational programs into schools and the community to start the conversation on mental wellness. Every individual manages their self-care and health differently. Creating broad resources and a vast support system provides these options for everyone. This webinar brings a different conversation around suicide prevention, and it starts by making your mental health a priority. I would like to introduce our first panelist, Ms. Paige Santmeyer. Paige Santmeyer is an associate professional counselor at Restoration Counseling in Atlanta, out of the Roswell area. She works with individuals, adults, and teens around issues of depression, anxiety, mood disorders, relationship issues, trauma, and life transitions. It's been our pleasure to have Paige as a lead presenter for the last 2 years with the LRJ Foundation. Paige, welcome.
Thank you so much, Teresa.
Absolutely. Paige, given your experience, can you share your perspective on some ways to stay mentally healthy during these uncertain times when it seems we can not really plan too far ahead or predict what will happen next?
Sure. The short answer is to prioritize your mental health for yourself and your family, but that can look different for everybody. So the first step is to recognize inside yourself when you are suffering with anxiety and stress. You may feel tense, break down crying, be angry, irritable, unmotivated, or just feel plain off. And these are your emotional messengers that are telling you that you need to do a little bit of self-care. And self-care is doing those personal things that are non-negotiable essentials that help you thrive, which is why mental health care looks different for everybody, because what makes you thrive is different than what makes me thrive. But there are some basics that we all have in common, and those include getting adequate sleep, eating a healthy diet, getting movement incorporated into every single day, maintaining connections with people that we love, friends, family, and incorporating some mindfulness into your day so that you have moments of peace and are able to slow down a little bit. But how do we do this? Because it's a very busy time and we're all stressed out, but it requires that we all have healthy boundaries with yourself and with others, because that gives you the margin to know what you can and cannot take on right now. And knowing that your right now boundaries are probably very different than they were pre-pandemic, and that's okay. Boundaries are our deepest way to respect ourselves and connect with your own needs. So you need to put them around the things in your life that bring you energy, inspiration, and enthusiasm, because that's what's going to ground you, so that whatever uncertain thing is thrown at you, expected or unexpected, you're going to be based in yourself and know yourself well enough and know what you can handle. So taking good care of your mental health lets you accept the uncertainty, flow with change, look with optimism at the rest of the year instead of looking at what you've lost and what was hard. It'll help you maintain a consistent structure and routine, and that gives you some certainty among all the other uncertain things in life. You can control what you're doing. And finally, it lets you give grace to yourself and to other people, because we're all doing the best we can under very difficult circumstances. But I urge everyone who is struggling, don't be afraid to ask for help. This is when you really need to be focused on yourself and your needs and what your family needs.
Excellent. Thank you, Paige, for those tips. We appreciate that very much. Very helpful. Next, I would like to introduce Miss Carmen Hurst. Carmen is an assistant principal at Webbridge Middle School and the lead founder of the We Have Decided Youth Leadership and Wellness Summit. She began as a special education teacher for 3 years, then served as 1 year as an administrative assistant before becoming assistant principal. She is currently in her 6th year as assistant principal in the Webbridge Middle School community. Carmen's school recently was awarded the Character.org Promising Practice Award for excellence for commendable initiatives in character building education. Carmen, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure.
Excellent. Carmen, from your experience as an educator with training in crisis leadership and leading through disruptive times, can you offer some tips to the community, especially our parents, on how parents can best support teachers and school administrators as they are trying to navigate these changing situations pretty much every day?
Every day is right. Yes. So first and foremost, please offer grace and patience to your children, to yourself, to the teachers and the staff. In the spring, educators were given essentially 1 day to figure out how to teach virtually. We definitely learned from our mistakes and that we made and the challenges that we overcame. But even now, our staff's continuously tasked with learning new tools, new methods to teach asynchronously, synchronously, 2 new terms that we learned throughout this pandemic. Educators are doing their best to make virtual learning as positive as an experience as possible. And as a parent myself, I want to reiterate the importance of providing yourself grace. Never did I intend to be the educator for my own children, and being thrown into that role definitely can put strain on family dynamics and relationships. So again, please give yourself grace. In regards to the school, please communicate early and often with the teachers, with the counselors, with the administration, with the support staff, anyone. Ask for clarity, share with the school what struggles your child is facing and what's going well, and any family circumstances that might be affecting your child. The more we know, the more we can help. And then Empathy is going to be extremely important as we move forward for the children and for the educators. Everyone has experienced this disruption differently. We need to acknowledge those differences, accept those differences, and provide support accordingly. Some students and teachers have thrived in the virtual setting, while other students have struggled to remain engaged and are missing the class collaborations. And then some teachers have struggled to learn the technologies needed real quickly in order to do these, to educate successfully. Organization is going to be key as we move towards face-to-face and we go through some phases. So helping create an organizational system that works for your child and your family. Provide the routine of support and communication. Create a routine to have discussions with your children about their day. That's going to be important as we make these transitions. Examples might be, give me one high, give me one low, or rate your day from 1 to 10. That's our family favorite. But I do encourage you to reach out to your school's counseling departments for additional suggestions, ideas, especially if you're getting some pushback from your child for organization. And encourage your child to engage fully. Teachers want to build relationships. We recognize that relationships is the true heartbeat of education, and it's difficult to build relationships when we're staring at an avatar on a screen. Some of them are very creative, but it doesn't give us a whole lot of insight into who they are. And finally, please remain positive in this transitional time. I learned the hard way about how our children feed off of our own energy. Please keep this in mind when you discuss these transitions with your children and assume goodwill. We are working tirelessly in the schools to put new procedures in place to ensure everyone's emotional and physical safety. But if we continue with the motto of we are on the same team, working and learning together, we'll do great.
Excellent. Ms. Hurst, thank you for that. I think that is so insightful, and that inside perspective is what we all need to know. It's that mindset that us as a community and parents need to have. I think some of those tips we should put on a document and make sure we send that out for reference. Thank you for being with us after a long school day. Next, I'm thrilled to introduce Dr. Janine Janot. Dr. Janot is the author of The Disintegrating Student, Super Smart and Falling Apart, has over 25 years of experience working with children, teenagers, young adults, both public and private schools, expanding from preschool through college age. Thank you for being part of this great conversation.
Thank you for having me. So
I would like to, tap in a little bit as, you are an ally dealing with parents and students. Going back to school has been a huge struggle, as we just heard from Mrs. Hurst, and all that we face from inside and outside the building. What are some concerns for families, dealing with COVID and going back to school that you think is the biggest issue parents are dealing with, and what advice do you have for them?
So we have a lot on our minds right now, but probably topping the list is the well-being of our kids. So what I think would be helpful is to share two things that I believe are key to helping our kids get through difficult times, because that's what we're in. So the first thing I'd suggest is listening to all the great advice that's being shared here tonight, and to take care of yourself and your well-being, and to definitely ask for what you need. That lets us show up as our best selves for our kids. The second thing is to be a warm and supportive adult presence for them. The research is really clear here that this is the single most important factor in protecting our kids from adversity. And it also fosters their ability to be resilient, their long-term resilience, which is obviously our goal, to have resilient kids. Being a warm and supportive adult presence, it's so powerful, and it only takes one caring, supportive adult to make this a big difference to a kid's life. And there's lots of ways we can show up. To do this for our kids, we can help them accurately identify and label their emotions by giving our kids more control over their responses to their strong feelings. We just want to be careful here not to minimize or negate their feelings. We can also adjust our expectations to better reflect the reality of our current situation. And then what we want to do is try to provide some structure and routine within that reality, because our kids are going to feel safe and secure when they know what to expect. It's also up to us grown-ups to do the heavy lifting when it comes to facilitating positive communication with our kids. And this means giving our kids, the gift of our full attention, listening with empathy and trying to understand their feelings rather than, sometimes we listen to problem solve or maybe to defend ourselves. So especially now when we can't fix many of the problems, we can validate how our kids are feeling and their concerns by listening and caring. And that's that warm, supportive presence is so critical. And so none of this is particularly difficult on its face, but when we're trying to do this consistently, it's very challenging. So my advice to parents is to model what you want to see in your kids. Our kids are watching us so closely. They have been since the minute they were born. So if you want your child to listen to what you're saying to them, just check yourself and see if you are modeling and showing them what it looks like to be a good listener. And you can go back to remembering how to take care of yourself first. We need to maybe think about how we're coping and take a look at our habits around, eating, sleeping, screens, exercise. And what we want to do is we want to have that struggle in front of our kids. So we want them to see us doing, well, our successes and our failures, the good and the bad, because I always think of that as living out loud in front of your kids. And it's truly our greatest superpower in helping them.
That's excellent. I love that. I love having superpowers as parents.
We need them.
Thank you so much for that. This is just excellent direction and guidance for our students and for our parents to help everyone along the way. So appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Up next, I'm excited to introduce Ms. Sanona Williams. Sanona is a licensed professional counselor at Path to Change in the Atlanta area. She specializes in multicultural counseling, premarital counseling, and affair recovery. We have been blessed to have Sanona part of the LRJ Foundation for the last 4 years here in the Georgia chapter. Sanona, thank you for your dedication.
Thank you.
Yes. Sanona, you have stepped in dozens of classrooms and assemblies and spoken in front of thousands of youth across Atlanta. And it's been incredible to watch these young minds take in the education of mental health, especially the understanding of anxiety, stress, and depression. I have heard over the last few months several people questioning whether they had possible COVID-19 symptoms or anxiety, when in fact it was just anxiety, which can also give us some physical symptoms. Can you give a breakdown of the confusion around some of the common stress of having anxiety and what it is to just have maybe stress?
Sure, absolutely, Teresa. They can mimic each other pretty closely, but the major difference is going to be the amount of time that you're stuck in that overwhelming worry. So with stress, when we think about it right now, we're all experiencing stress, worrying about making sure we're safe when we go out in public and making sure we're using the proper social distancing and washing our hands, wearing our mask. So, but when this pandemic is over, that stress goes away. But when we think about somebody who struggles with anxiety, they are struggling with what happens tomorrow and the next day, and they're not able to get out of that negative loop of wondering how things are going to get better for them. And an example that I like to give that really makes it easy for people to understand is for our students, when exam time comes. So a student knows they're going to have midterm and final exams. Somebody who's stressed about it is going to put some things into action. So they're going to start studying, a couple of days before their exam. They're going to get a good night's sleep the night before. They're going to wake up in the morning and have breakfast. And once they go take that test, they're not going to worry about that anymore. They're moving on to the next thing they have to focus on. Someone with anxiety may start worrying about the midterm on the first day of school. and they get caught in a negative cycle of thinking, okay, I'm never going to pass this midterm, which means I'm going to fail this class. And when I fail this class, I'm not going to pass to the next grade. And then I'm going to be stuck in high school or middle school, and I'm never going to get out of my parents' house. And I don't even know why I'm trying, because this is never going to work out for me. So they get stuck in that negative cycle of anxiety where they're having these ruminating thoughts that they can't control or slow down. Whereas with stress, once whatever the activity or situation is that's causing the stress is gone, that stress that alleviates. But with anxiety, it doesn't just let up once the situation has changed.
Thank you for that, Sanona. Thanks for that clarity. I think that's really helpful. Let's talk about social media and anxiety for a moment. The allure of social media can be, immediate access to information, and that could also create increased anxiety or maybe depression. Being able to filter through what is true facts and maybe what is fiction can cause anyone to become overwhelmed. Sanona, can you speak on how students and parents should limit engaging into social media banter and how that can even impact our emotions?
Yes, absolutely. And it's interesting. I love Dr. Janot because she started laying the foundation for what I was going to say as far as thinking about boundaries, because one of the most important things with our social media is placing boundaries. So reducing the amount of time we spend online. So we set limits, and as parents, our kids are watching us. So if they see us on our phones or our tablets, they're going to be like, well, you doing it, why can't I? So if we start to place limits on how much time we're spending, that is modeling that behavior for our children. So some things we can do to help us with reducing that amount of time online is use an app to track how much time you're spending on social media sites. Don't take your electronics to bed with you. I know a lot of us use our phones as alarm clocks, but there are these wonderful things that we used to use a long time ago, clock radios. You can use that instead. Disable the notifications that come through on your phone to alert you about social media and limit the number of times you're checking it. That's going to be the first step in helping to reduce some of those symptoms of anxiety and depression. Another thing is to change your focus. If you're using social media as a substitute for life, then you're feeling inadequate. You're judging yourself against what you're seeing somebody else post. And we always post our best self. And so what you're seeing may not be an exact representation. So if we change our focus and use it maybe just to learn something new, a new recipe or a new book, then we're changing our focus and it's not becoming the primary source of how we are living our lives. And another thing you can do is to spend some time with your friends on settings that aren't social media. So for instance, you can do a Zoom meeting like we're doing now, where you can actually see one another face to face and engage versus just reading what they put on their Snapchat or Instagram or tweets. You're actually having a conversation with them. And this allows you to engage in that one-on-one personal contact, which is really important when we're working to reduce anxiety and depression. Face-to-face contact is a really important factor because it allows bonding. And the last thing we can do to help reduce some of those symptoms is to find ways to express our gratitude. So volunteer or help somebody else, even if you make a donation to an organization that you support, or if you take food to a food shelter, you're finding ways to express your gratitude and you're helping. And those are positive ways because they give you a sense of purpose and belonging, which are crucial in helping to reduce the symptoms of anxiety and depression.
Excellent. Thank you, Sanona, for all that. That was so insightful. And like I spoke about in my opening, when I talk about protective factors and risk factors against self-harm and suicide prevention, this is what this is. All these great protective factors that we're talking about on the education and having knowledge. So these are really the underlying risk factors that we need to have when it comes to preventing self-harm. Anxiety is so important in depression, talking about these. And as we're coming back into face-to-face instruction, I would like to jump back to Ms. Carmen Hurst for a moment. And being that this is such a timely event for going back to face-to-face instruction in schools that have already started face-to-face instruction, I would love to have your insight on what mindset we should have as we start back to face-to-face instruction.
Okay, so, it was a struggle to return to work. We came back, the assistant principals for middle school at least came back in July. And we realized as a school admin team that we had to be intentional with our staff and take time to mourn the loss of what was. And we dedicated some time to give those teachers and staff the opportunity to go ahead and do that. We had to kind of let go of what we knew to be regular and then before we could move on and able to fully let go and begin to open our hearts and minds to our new normal. And that's kind of the theme that I think we've got to focus on, is we're going to have a new normal as we enter back into the schoolhouse. Dwight Carter, in his book, Leading Schools in Disruptive Times, states, the world might be changing, but if we are still looking through yesterday's lens, we will not see what is occurring today. We will search for what we know and find it has transformed or is no longer visible. So I think it would be really helpful for parents to have that conversation with their children about the new normal. Students need to understand before they step inside that school won't necessarily look the same. Schools are right now working through their procedures to be in place to comply with new and ever-changing guidelines. But be positive about that. Your children will feed off of your energy, and that will make a huge difference in the return to school. Remember to share with your children that priorities of the school, they've had to kind of shift. We have an even greater emphasis on school safety for both the emotional and physical safety, which means that instruction for at least a period of time is going to take a back seat to the safety, especially at the beginning of the return to face-to-face and until the new procedures become routine. And Fulton County Schools, we're so fortunate that they have identified student success skills, which we have a curriculum that we get to use to teach these skills. And each week we discuss a topic that relates to one of the skills. And that would be a great dinner conversation starter to talk about those skills. Where the lessons are great, they're short, sweet, to the point, and even us educators are getting that professional development as well. Continue to talk with and listen to your children, gauge their anxiety levels. If you notice a shift in mood or attitude, please reach out to the school. We can help. Our counseling department's ready. This transition is going to be a balancing act of face-to-face for 1 day or 2 days for a couple of weeks, and then virtual the other days. So that routine that I talked about before is going to be super important. And while we are all excited to welcome the kids back, we're also super anxious about it. So please continue to assume the goodwill. This, like I said before, that we're putting together so many new practices and procedures, and most likely those are going to have to shift once the students get here and we figure out how it actually works with students. So just be patient with us. And, I'll conclude with going back to grace. It's going to be really important to give grace to your children, to the school staff, and especially to yourself.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ms. Harris. I appreciate that. So insightful. This leads us into our next part about connection. And I'm really excited to introduce our next panelist, Amanda Johnson. Amanda is a licensed associate marriage and family therapist, currently working in private practice in the Buckhead area of Atlanta. She primarily works with adolescents, families, and couples to foster healthy relationships, improve coping with anxiety, depression, life transitions, and grief. Amanda has been a member of the LRJ Foundation since 2017 as a lead presenter and curriculum specialist. Amanda, welcome.
Thanks, Teresa. Happy to be here.
Yes, great. Well, Amanda, I'm a big believer in your relationship work. I find so much truth in the power of healthy relationships, and also to encourage removing yourself from unhealthy relationships in our lives. What are some healthy relationship skills for families and marriages that can be especially important during these stressful times?
Sure. I think healthy relationships, building them and maintaining them is especially important during the pandemic when we are more isolated than usual. Feeling connected and happy in our relationships is essential for our well-being and our mental health. We are wired to be connected to people and not have to do all of life and stress and pandemics on our own. So with that being said, I'm going to share 3 helpful tips on how to build and maintain our healthy relationships. And when I talk about relationships, that's with our family, our partners, our kids, our friends, with anyone. So the first one is balance our togetherness and our separateness. And it is really easy to have our togetherness and separateness in our relationships blend together, especially now when we're home more than usual. We really want to communicate softly with our family about what is alone time and what is together time. So that looks like mornings are alone to focus on school and work, exercises alone, but dinner is together for bonding, and we go on walks around the neighborhood together. The second thing is small things often. To build connection and maintain positivity in our relationships, we want small moments of connection often. This is significantly more important for relationship and overall happiness than big grand gestures. So that looks like a lot of hugs, kisses, I love yous, picking up a favorite treat for someone, or sharing what you admire and appreciate about your loved ones. The last and the third one is sharing our core positive needs softly. And these may have changed during the pandemic. I know a couple of the other panelists alluded to that as well. So we want to share our needs often and repeatedly with our loved ones. No one is a mind reader, so we have to consistently teach our partners, our children, our parents how to care for us. And it's really important that when sharing your request for your needs, that it is absent of criticism, contempt, or defensiveness. It's really important for it to be positive to help elicit more connection and help get your needs met. So that would look like, I would really appreciate some alone time, or I would really appreciate to have some more together time for us to connect and to bond. So relationships are really important, especially as all of this transition and stress is happening in our lives. It really can increase our mental health and well-being.
Excellent. Thank you, Amanda, for those great takeaways. I think they're very easy for us to take and apply into our life, and I hope we can all use some of those starting tomorrow.
Thanks.
So up next, I'm excited to introduce on our professional panel. She is a key stakeholder in our community, and this is Joelle Gooding. Joelle is the Executive Director of Mental Health America of Georgia. She is a national certified counselor with 20 years experience in mental health services and supports. Mrs. Gooding was instrumental in working with providers on support adolescents as they transition into adulthood to improve long-term outcomes of youth with serious emotional disturbances and serious mental illness. As Executive Director, Mrs. Gooding strives for health equality and fights to eliminate the stigma of mental illness by increasing mental health literacy throughout the state. Outstanding experience, Ms. Gooding. We are happy to have you here tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me, Teresa.
Absolutely. Joelle, please share some of the great work your organization does and takes part in across the state and the nation.
Absolutely. So again, we are an education, outreach, and advocacy organization, and we provide mental health awareness education across the state. We are part of a national affiliate, Mental Health America, based out of Alexandria, Virginia. So we have the opportunity to engage with our communities in providing our Kids on the Block, which is a puppetry arts program, our Leadership, Empowerment, and Access program, which is a training for youth and young adults, and then our Mental Health Academy, which provides that mental health awareness in order to eliminate the stigma associated with mental illness, but also to increase mental health literacy and reduce the rates of suicide across the state. Our goals overall is to ensure that we improve mental wellness, and we do that with our programs. Last year, we trained over 9,000 Georgians throughout the state, and we did 10,000 for our children in providing those performances. And all of that is just demonstrating our mental health literacy so that we can build resilience and wellness across the board.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. This is great resources as we provided in the chat. Please check out Mental Health America of Georgia for more support. Joelle, we covered a lot of this so far in the webinar, and it's very clear the importance of integrating daily self-care to manage our wellness and combat anxiety. Can you recap some wellness management and coping skills that our viewers can take home with them today?
Absolutely. And we did talk a lot about how important it is to integrate self-care in our day-to-day in order to reduce our stress levels. But when we talk about self-care, it's also about understanding yourself. What is it that gives you that joy, that gives you that reduction of stress? Because it's going to look different for everybody. Being able to take action, right? Self-care is not just sitting there and hoping that, something will come along to allow us to feel better, but it engages us in ways so that we're better supported. And it allows us to maintain our wellness. And it's a necessity. And you have so many different areas when you think about self-care. And some of that, it will be spiritual, it can be psychological. We talked about journaling and writing and really looking at the benefits overall. Next slide, please. But I wanted to also just share with you all a self-care plan and the importance of being intentional with your self-care. And like I said, you can look at it from a physical and exercising, psychological, finding ways to cry, right? Emotional, social, professional, spiritual, and financial, all of those areas of self-care you can implement. And basically what you're doing is just asking yourself, how do you support your overall well-being daily? And then what are some of those activities you would like to try to implement in your daily self-care plan? And it could be something very simple. It isn't a luxury. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It doesn't have to cost us any money whatsoever. It's about what allows us to feel less stress, allows us to feel more control. Some activities, next slide, please, that you can think about is developing a mindful meal. And that's cooking for yourself and really paying attention to the seasonings, the taste, and all of that, really focusing on those areas. But you can also do deep breathing, right? We can do deep breathing in and out, counted measures, 4 times in, 4 times out. We can also do muscle relaxation where we're paying attention to our bodies. Mindfulness is ultimately being present, allowing yourself to get out of our heads and really focus on the present, what's around us, what can we touch, taste, feel, things that we can see immediately. And that allows us to really reduce our stress and allows us to feel a lot more connected to what we need for our mental well-being.
Excellent. Joelle, thank you for these. I think these are great reminders, even for those that have been around mindfulness or do, daily self-care, and even mental health professionals. We need these reminders and new ideas. So we appreciate this. Thank you for your time and being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Yes. Next, I would like to introduce Miss Deidre Neely. Deidre is a Georgian native and served in the field of behavioral health and social services for over 20 years. For the last 12 years, her concentration has been in crisis intervention, supporting Georgians and training behavioral health professionals. Currently, Deidre serves as the Director of Behavioral Health Links Contact Center that manages the Georgia Crisis and Access Line, MyGCAL, phone application. Wow, this is incredible. And we are very excited to have you here tonight. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Great. So now we're turning this conversation a little bit more over to resources. And I'm excited to share, Deidre, the Crisis and Access Line may not be known by many people. What is GCAL?
So the Georgia Crisis and Access Line is a line that one of the owners of Behavioral Health Link and created in Augusta, Georgia. And when we had a lot of the victims of Hurricane Katrina come to Georgia, they needed a way to find resources, behavioral health resources. The state of Georgia at that point in time said, wow, that's a wonderful resource to have for them. We need to have that for everyone in the state of Georgia. So hence the creation of the Georgia Crisis and Access Line. What we do is, of course, assist anyone that calls us that is within the borders of Georgia when they're experiencing a mental health crisis, a substance use crisis, or if the individual is experiencing a developmental disability crisis. So that means that we engage greatly with schools, some privately owned behavioral health facilities, of course, with emergency room, police officers, of course, with fire departments, other 911 contact centers to provide that support. So if you are someone you know is experiencing a behavioral health crisis, if they're saying that they don't know if they want to continue to live, or they're really struggling with depression or anxiety, if they're having what of course for us is called psychotic behaviors, or if they're saying they're hearing things or seeing things, or someone needs some help with substance use, you give us a call, you speak to one of our licensed clinicians. We have a staff of associate licensed professional counselors, master's social workers, and some LMFTs, and of course, fully licensed counselors and social workers that will talk to you about what's going on. That process is not a quick call. A lot of people say, well, call the crisis line and they'll get out here very quickly. Well, we have to find out what's happening with that individual to make sure that we're going to connect you to services. So we're not a talk line, as you may call some of the national suicide prevention lines where you can call and just talk. Our goal is to, one, make sure that you're safe. Two, determine how we can connect you to community services that will give you that ongoing support. So we'll go through what we call a crisis assessment to find out, one, are you safe? Two, what's happening, so that we'll know who to connect you with immediately. So that may come down to us dispatching one of the mobile crisis teams that's located in all 159 counties of the state. Once that team is dispatched, these services are free, by the way. That fully licensed clinician will come to your home, sit with you, find out what's happening, so that way they can say, okay, this person is safe to remain at home, and so we can connect them to outpatient services. Sometimes those services, we can get them connected with by that following morning, if not that same day. But we want to make sure we make that happen within 48 hours of that initial contact with us in the contact center, to ensure that people have that continued support. If someone is in need of inpatient treatment, be that behavioral, that for mental health, substance use, or due to developmental disabilities, we're that place where everybody in the state of Georgia gives us a call, so we can help people get those resources for inpatient care. And we also have the MyGCal app. This is my baby. We started a MyGCal app back in 2019 and started pushing that out to that age group of 10 to 26. Deirdre, why age 10 to 26? Now mind you, anybody can use this app. We're not going to turn anybody away, because we know that if you feel more comfortable talking to us through the chat or the text, that we're going to talk to you. We're never going to turn anybody away, because we know it takes a lot to either dial 11 digits or download an app and start a conversation. But we wanted that app for that particular age group, because they're not old like me that say, I want to pick up the phone, I want to hear your voice, I want to engage, I want to laugh and talk and have this extended conversation. But for that particular age group, what they're looking at is ease of contact, where it doesn't feel like it's so overwhelming. I got to dial 11 digits just to have somebody I can talk to. The app is what we consider to be a warm support. So we've had it where we've had a 10-year-old that, was at home, kind of bored, but dealing with some depression because of how things have been going. So downloaded the app, remember what happened before the pandemic happened, and started texting us. And it winded up being a very good engagement with him. Our staff was able to engage, help him identify ways to cope with the depression. He actually wasn't in care already. So it really winded up being a good thing. We've also been able to talk to children that were sitting in school who were experiencing some suicidal thoughts and actually had a plan. The young lady didn't give us any of her identifying information except for her zip code. Thankfully, she was in a small county. So we knew how we got around to getting about her age and, a little bit more about her. We got in contact with the Board of Education in that county, and they were able to get in contact with the school counselor. The school counselor called us. We talked to her. She was able to go directly to that child's classroom and get that child's parent on the phone, and we were able to dispatch mobile crisis. So we were thinking of how can we reach out to children and young adults so that they know that there's somebody that when they want to talk, there's access for them. Even when they just say, well, they'll never know who I am. I don't have to give them my name. They don't. Because again, we want them to know that if you just want to talk, come on, download the app, talk to us. We literally are open 24/7. We never close. I've been working for the company 8 years, and I have probably been working all 24/7 every day of those years. But we're always open to them to provide that support.
This is so enlightening to hear. Thank you for sharing this resource. I think many parents are going to find this helpful, and out of the many apps our children have on our phone, this one should be there between the ages of 10 and 26 years old. Thank you for sharing this great information. We posted in the chat box, and we'll be sharing it on LRJ and the City of Milton's website. I appreciate your time. Yes, well, that includes our expert panel for tonight, and we are going to now start our youth leader panel. I'm excited to welcome 3 amazing high school students. With us, first up, we have Daniella Claiborne. Daniella is a senior at Alpharetta High School. She's a proud Georgia native, and she also has a twin sister. So we have something in common here. She's an exceptional tennis player, serving as co-captain of her varsity team, and she's a dedicated member to her student council and link crew at Alpharetta High School. Daniella, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So Daniella, in February, you had the opportunity to be a mentor at the We Have Decided Youth Leadership and Wellness Summit to some 7th and 8th grade students. How was that leading middle school students, and did you find it valuable for yourself and for the students at that age?
Yes, I had an awesome time leading the students at the summit. They were great, and they generated so many great ideas to improve their school with additions. The idea that most of them had agreed on was a nap time, and it seems a little elementary, but it's very important to have maybe 15 or 30 minutes of just a mental break to get your mind off of school and pressure and stress. It doesn't have to be a nap. It could just be you sitting back and maybe just closing your eyes or staring into blank space. But I mean, I thought that was, they may not have created the idea as really something that will help mentally, but they did make something like that.
That's awesome. I love that. I love those mental breaks. I think we all need them, and they're trying to be creative and find those ways that they can put those into their day, because your school days are busy and hectic, and having those breaks makes sense to me. Daniella, for the past few weeks, we had some great conversations, and I really love the point that you would like to share tonight. This is on communication channels. And wanting to be more connected to your school and have more information shared your way. As we heard from Amanda, the importance of connection and building healthy relationships and good communication is so important when it comes to being connected, being organized in our life, which all aligns with less pressure and less stress. Can you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, communication is so important. I don't know if it's at a lot of schools, but at my school, it seems that most of the emails and information go to the parents instead of the students, and which is a problem because our parents want us to be adults and be responsible and handle what we need to, but we can't do that if we're not getting the right information. We can't rely on our parents to forward us the email because they might be busy with their jobs or whatever else they have to do, and they won't be able to do that. So we could miss something crucial. I think a way to maybe fix this would be to definitely add students to the email list or create another list with the students on them so they're getting those emails, or create some type of text message list, because not everyone uses the social media that has a lot of information on it. Maybe they think it's not cool to follow their school and social media, but a text message list would be great because, but not with just like a lot of information that doesn't pertain to the entire student body. Like there's football practice for someone who doesn't, football practice information for someone who doesn't even play a sport. But a list like that would be great because it's, and the information is just coming to them, they just have it, and they don't have to go out of their way to retain it.
Yeah.
I think that making sure that everyone in the family knows what's going on will stop a lot of arguments and stress as well, because if you nearly miss something or do miss something, you might blame it on one another, and we shouldn't be doing that. If someone doesn't know what's going on, someone else can step in and tell them, yeah, this is what's going on, and just leave it at that. I know from experience that it's very stressful to almost miss something because maybe your mom didn't forward you the email until a week after she got it. So we're trying to do our best in school, and we don't really need that extra stress on top of our schoolwork. So.
Thank you, Danielle. That is so insightful. I love how, I mean, you guys heard it yourself, you know, from a senior in high school. These students are incredible, and they want to be involved. They want to have the communication. Lack of communication is not serving them. So they want the responsibilities and having that connection to that whole family dynamic and being more connected to their schools. Danielle, thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to welcome on our student leader panel is Ambrosia Sharma. She is a junior at Cambridge High School, where she takes honors and AP courses and is actively involved in her student leadership and her school programs. She is currently state officer for Skills USA Georgia. She is a member of her school's mock trial team, a varsity policy debater, and junior class president. She's a student representative for the Superintendent's Advisory Council as well. Along with her best friend, Ambrosia hosts a podcast titled Slam Trunk, discussing trending topics from growing teens in the United States. Ambrosia's plan is to pursue public policy. Welcome, Ambrosia. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's an honor to be here.
Yes, very impressive right out the gate. Commend you for everything you're doing. You know, from some of our recent conversations, it was very clear to me that self-love is an important quality to have for self-care. Why do you feel this way? And how do you think teenagers can realize that they lack self-love, appreciation, self-doubt for themselves to help them make more decisions and get the support that they need?
Of course. So me personally, I take part in activities in which I am constantly putting myself out there, whether it be publicly speaking or, you know, meeting new people. It's constantly interacting and engaging with new people, which means that in order to be able to confidently do that and confidently lead, I have to have self-love. And I think that that's not only constant for, you know, public speaking gigs versus just everyday life. You know, everyone always wants to present themselves confidently, and it becomes a struggle to do that when you're lacking in self-love. And I think that as a community, we need to stop like faking it and actually believe in ourselves. And I think that it's important to feel confident in oneself before taking on new endeavors, because at the end of the day, not believing you're qualified to do something, not believing that you have the ability to do something is a lot more damaging than, you know, spending the time to really acquaint with oneself. So for our community specifically, I think that an important factor in deciding whether or not you're lacking in self-love or self-confidence, etc., is making the distinction between self-doubt and just being nervous about something, whether it be before an interview, before major tests, or for me, before coming onto this panel. It's important to realize that being nervous about things, you know, like, oh, I don't know what they're going to ask me, or, oh, I don't know what to expect, is normal, right? Like, that's normal. But doubting yourself and being like, I don't have the qualifications to be here, I don't deserve to be here, I don't look a certain way, I don't present myself a certain way, those things are harmful. So I encourage my peers, if you're ever feeling those things before anything important that's coming up, to really resonate with them and try to find where those feelings are coming from, and try to combat those instead of just pretending like it's nervousness.
That's awesome. Risha, thank you so much for sharing that. That's so helpful, even for us as adults. I think it's very enlightening and reassuring as well. So I see you have a podcast. I would love for you to explain your why behind starting this.
So I do have a podcast titled Slam Trunk. I host it with my best friend Anvita. And the main reason why we started this podcast was actually because about in March, I want to say, so a few months ago, we were featured on another podcast titled The Inspire Project, who's also hosted by one of my friends. And they focus on interviewing high schoolers who have passions about certain things or are outstanding leaders in their community, etc. And after being on that podcast, me and my friend received a lot of positive feedback. It was a lot of like, oh, we love to hear about your opinions on things. Oh, could you start a podcast? I'd love to hear about college advice. I'd love to hear about self-love. I'd love to hear about, a plethora of topics. So after hearing that feedback, that's what really got the ball rolling in terms of starting our own podcast, which was super exciting.
It's very exciting, and I'm super proud of you for doing so. I've listened to a few and they're fantastic. So we have the links to your podcast here. I hope many tune in, and I look forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So up next, we have our student leader, Rohit. He is a senior at Alpharetta High School. He thrives in a team setting, especially in the realm of economics, business, and policy. Rohit participates in Future Business Leaders of America, the student council organization at his high school, and amongst other things. Additionally, Rohit also has a podcast called Straight Up. Him and his friend discuss pressing issues for teenagers. This is so inspiring. Rohit, thank you for being with us here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I think it's a great opportunity for me to speak on some powerful and empowering topics.
Absolutely. So the first thing I want to jump right into is, how do you value the student-to-student connection regarding mental health awareness, and what are some of your experiences when connecting and networking?
Yeah, so I think our amazingly qualified and experienced professional panelists were able to kind of touch up on the relationship between students and schools and students and parents. And I think something that's, if not equally, maybe even more importantly, is the connection that students have, and being able to work and talk to like-minded individuals when it comes to not only mental wellness, but just any aspect in life. And I kind of see that in three pillars. The first being a platform. So in this time, Generation Z, all the students that are in elementary, middle, and high school, and even college, have this unique platform that has been amplified through social media. And I think it's very crucial that we're all able to find a way to use this platform to our advantage, to help benefit our mental wellness and help achieve the goals that we want to achieve. And I think that now is our time to be able to voice our own opinions, not let anything get in the way with that. And I think being able to stand up for yourself and voice your own thoughts on certain projects or certain topics will definitely have a positive impact on your mental wellness, because it shows that, just as Ambu just talked about self-love, it shows that you're confident in your own opinion, you're confident in what you want to share to others. Second is networking. I think this can seem as a challenge, especially during these unprecedented times where a lot of events and school altogether is just taken on a virtual setting. But it kind of deals with just students being able to reach out to others and network and be able to develop those connections that, although are beneficial in the short term, are a lot more beneficial in the long term. And I think whether like this networking can take place in school, in friendly environments, or even at conferences or club meetings, I think it's a great environment and a great way to meet like-minded individuals where you can learn more about yourself and also varying perspectives, backgrounds, and thoughts on topics that you care a lot about. And third is, I think probably the most important part, is opportunity. And this is all about taking it a step further. And it's important that we as students and as emerging leaders are able to kind of seize any and every opportunity that we even see mildly appealing to us, because we never know what they have in store for us and what kind of benefits we can receive in the long term. Like, for example, I participated in debate for the past 4 years now. And before I got into the program and before I kind of knew what debate was, my mom kind of urged me to try it out and kind of see, this could help with your public speaking and your self-confidence. I thought, okay, you know, I'll go for a few classes and kind of see how it is. And before I knew it, I was so invested in the club and so invested in talking with like-minded individuals and being able to share my opinions on arguments and political arguments. And I think looking back, it really shows a really large benefit towards myself, and it's really shaped a lot of who I interact with on a daily basis and how I present myself to. So I think it's important that during this period of exploration and growth, we're all able to find that avenue of expression that we can put hours and hours of time and effort towards and not be tired of it any bit. And additionally, like for the parents that are watching, I encourage you to communicate these messages to your children and show just how important like it is to build beneficial connections with other students and being able to let them explore anything that they want, because definitely now is the best time to do that.
Rohit, that's excellent. These connecting points are so important, and giving the confidence and the encouragement to explore and do that, I think is so great. So thank you for those tips. And I think Daniella, Ambrosia, and Rohit, I think you all can relate to this, but academics are different today for you all going through middle school and high school, which is vastly different from your parents. It's hard for anyone to truly understand the pressures that you're going through unless you're actually in it. Can you just enlighten us a little bit more on what that actually looks like for you?
Of course. So for me personally, I've been blessed to have parents who let me do whatever I want to in terms of academics. They're like, you know, oh, you want to join Skills USA, be state officer. You want to be a debater, go for it. Which is something that I'm super grateful to them for. But that also means that as a student, I've kind of learned the hard way how to say no to things, no to opportunities when they come up. Which means a lot of times I end up being stressed. And extracurriculars on top of academic struggles or academic classes, it builds up very quickly. So I would say like the biggest thing that I would want to tell all parents out there is that I know regardless of whatever your beliefs are about mental health, it's really important to start prioritizing it. And that's something that I've only learned recently. Only learned how to say no to things because I feel really stressed out. And I think that as parents, you know, reaching out might seem awkward, it might seem hard, but asking those important questions like, hey, I know you were really stressed out about that math test. Tell me how that affected you, versus saying, what'd you get on the math test? Small changes like that make all the difference. And I really encourage, regardless of, you know, what your beliefs are on the prevalence of mental health, to start prioritizing it. Because I know in different, you know, minority groups, etc., there are different beliefs, but it's time to start prioritizing it.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, and kind of like just hopping on that, I completely agree with everything that Ambrosia said. And like living in an Asian household, my parents definitely prioritize, apart from safety, of course, education is top of their list in terms of kind of the academic goals that they've set forth for me. And I've dealt with some academic pressures that can be put on, but I know that there are people who have dealt with much more intense pressures, have gone through stronger and more emotionally dealt situations, I guess. But I just want to make sure that I urge parents to adopt a very open-minded stance, as a lot of situations and experiences that we as students go through are so unique towards the present day, especially with the presence of COVID-19. I think it's important that all of us in the family are able to adopt an open-minded stance. And for me, I was able to kind of develop more of a bond with my parents by just having conversations with them and being able to talk about what my goals are and versus what their goals for me are. Because obviously parents have a tremendous influence in our outlook on life. And again, similar to Ambrosia, I've been grateful to have two amazing parents who have taught me a lot of very valuable lessons. So I hope that parents and students are able to have these conversations that not only will benefit the students themselves in terms of their outlook on life and their mental wellness, but also just the familial bond that will serve a lot in the long term.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. I think this is so enlightening for so many to know that we are all in the same boat and that we can just remove the barriers, and we're all here. We're going through some of the same struggles. It just looks differently on the inside. It looks differently on the outside. And even though the ones that are smiling and seem strong on the outside, still reach out to them. On behalf of the LRJ Foundation and the City of Milton, Georgia, our amazing audience tonight watching, and all this wonderful panel that we had, Thank you all for your insight and expertise. We appreciate you being here. We're going to share our resources tonight, but also this is just the start of the conversation. We are just tapping into some of these topics from each of our professionals. So reach out to us, find us on our Facebook page, the City of Milton, and we're here for you. We've had some great people on our team, and now we're all on the same team. So I'm going to turn this closing over to Rohit.
So on behalf of all the student leaders and all the professional panelists, I'd like to thank the LRJ Foundation and the City of Milton for partnering and hosting this very enlightening discussion. And as Ms. Russby just said, this is only the start. And I hope that all of us can kind of look generally and look at the big picture and take this a step forward. And with that, I encourage you to look back on some of these topics that were discussed from these leaders and take at least one idea or piece of advice that spoke directly to you and find a way to kind of embed that into your life. This can be done with having conversations with friends and family, or even altering your daily routine. As such, there's so many practices that will help benefit your mental wellness, not only in the short term, but in the long term as well. And again, for updates and information, feel free to follow the LRJ Foundation on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the City of Milton. They have some amazing resources, as you can see on the PowerPoint as well, to kind of benefit the mental wellness in your family. And again, we thank you for your time this evening and hope that today has been better than yesterday. Good night, everyone.